Villains. We love to hate them. But Marvel movies make it just a little bit harder to do. On this episode of Spot's Den List, we're counting down the top 10 supervillains from the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we're secretly rooting for. We're picking some of the best villains in the MCU based on their first appearance in the films, their motives, and the impact they made on the whole franchise. If you're one of the 5 people who aren't caught up on all the plots, this is your spoiler warning. At number 10, we have Ultron.
In the flesh.
If the villain's in the title, you can bet they deliver some major impact. Ultron is a sneaky villain, in more ways than one. He was born from the Mind Stone, one of the Infinity Stones, and Jarvis, tech of Tony Stark's own design, both of which were meshed together for Earth's defense. It's because of this that the Avengers didn't really think he would be inherently evil. Actor James Spader, who was tasked with giving Ultron movement and a voice, compared Ultron to a dangerous, disturbed child. One with no filter, but altogether too much power. But admit it, haven't you looked at the state of the world once and thought humanity was the planet's greatest threat too? Just be thankful you don't have superpowers.
You take away my world, I take away yours.
Next, we have Kaecilius from Doctor Strange, at number 9. Kaecilius' backstory in the film is interesting on its own, but Mads Mikkelsen gave the role a menacing depth that disturbs the audience with how close this villain's motives come to being justifiable. His demeanor from the jump is creepy, making him the perfect foil for the good guys. And at certain points in the movie, you can almost see his point. However, his ambition proves to be both his greatest strength and his downfall.
That is hilarious.
For number 8, we have Aldrich Killian from Iron Man 3. No, we never agreed with his methods, and fiddling in genetics is way out of our ethical wheelhouse. But you have to admit that Tony Stark can be a real jerk sometimes. He stood this guy up and left him stranded on a freezing rooftop, for crying out loud. This villain is wonderfully complex when you have a good look. He poses some great moral questions about how we treat other people. He lost us a little bit when he let his employees explode in his experiments and called our corporate queen Pepper Potts a trophy. But the guy was so far gone by then that it was just fascinating to watch. Now, if you've seen Thor Ragnarok, you'll definitely love our baddie in the 7th spot. Played by the oddly delightful and delightfully odd Jeff Goldblum, the Grand Master may not have been the major villain of the film, but if he can inspire fear into Loki, the god of mischief, then you know you're at least a few levels above Villainy 101. He was wacky and strange, almost charming, but also incredibly off-putting. You go, yeah, sure, he killed people for sport, but he is the vibe. How are you supposed to win against the vibe?
Was that like sparkles?
Some of you may say that our 6th placer is a cop-out because he isn't really a villain. And that's fair, but he was certainly introduced as one when he first appeared, or reappeared, in the movies. The Winter Soldier certainly gave Steve Rogers, aka everyone's sweet summer child, the runaround before finally regaining his memories as Bucky Barnes. In fact, the Winter Soldier was absolutely terrifying. He made audiences doubt Captain America's near indomitable strength for a hot minute. But what makes him a masterful villain is how it wasn't what he did that kept our eyes glued to the screen. It was how Cap's solid and reliable demeanor was completely thrown off by the Winter Soldier's mere existence. Halfway through, still with us? Our number 5 is a bit of a Vader situation. Only worse, because you actually get invested in him before finding out he'd throw you out of an airlock in space as soon as he looks at you. The chemistry between the fictional father and son was so natural that you'd never think he was one of the villains. His blink and you'll miss it switch from being Star-Lord's funny dad to being a power-hungry maniac was done so smoothly. Maybe a little too smoothly. While we didn't necessarily root for him or his agenda, we really wanted him to be a dad to our sweet baby Star-Lord. Is that so wrong? In fourth place is Hela.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn.
We already know that Cate Blanchett is one of the best actresses in our generation, and possibly ever, so it's no surprise that she delivered a strong performance as Hela in Thor Ragnarok. Remember how she destroyed Thor's hammer with one hand? You know, the Mjolnir, that hammer that most of the Avengers couldn't even lift? Her presence alone might be horrifying, but you can't help but be enchanted with how she wreaks havoc in Asgard, almost effortlessly to get what she wants. She's actually not all that different from Loki in her motivations. She was promised an empire, and an empire is what she set out to get. You almost can't blame her. Personally, we blame Odin.
I failed you.
Third on our list is the Vulture from Spider-Man: Homecoming. If you were one of those fans who read the comics, the idea of the Vulture isn't actually very exciting, but the MCU made it work. Michael Keaton plays the antagonist, who goes by the name of Adrian Toomes, an average Joe family man who just wants to provide for his loved ones. Well, after losing his job and a super important gig, he seemed to have been left with no other alternative but to turn to weapons trafficking. By some sick twist of fate, he also finds out the true identity of Spider-Man.
Good old Spider-Man.
We don't necessarily approve of his choice to lead a life of crime, but was Toomes really given a fair choice? The guy was just trying to be a good dad. Similar to the Vulture, our villain who ends up in second place also has a compelling reason to turn to the dark side. We have Eric Killmonger, the main antagonist in Black Panther, played by the incredible Michael B. Jordan. There are a lot of reasons why he's one of the best villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First off, his cool and confident demeanor makes you pay attention almost as soon as you see him on screen. Second, the real-life discourse he was able to generate about the movie just because of his presence was impressive. Some people would debate that Eric was right to think that Wakanda should share its resources with the rest of the world. However good his points were, he went about making them in the worst possible way. But even then, when you understand the complexities of racial tension and the very grim reality of inequality, you can find it in yourself to see where Killmonger is coming from. For our number one best villain, it's a no-brainer, really.
Surprise!
We have Loki, played by the iconic Tom Hiddleston. What makes him the number one villain we'd love to root for out of everyone here is how his character is fully formed. Yes, he was terrifying in his madness and quest for power in the first two Thor movies and in the Avengers movies. But his reasons are very human, in spite of his position as a god. We get to see all sides of his character. He is a competent and unpredictable strategist, but he also has a vulnerable side to him. And these qualities, at war with one another, are a constant in any Marvel production starring the God of Mischief. Love him or hate him, you definitely want to see more of him. This is why he's the best villain in the MCU. Well, the best villain so far. And that's our top 10 supervillains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe we're secretly rooting for. Who's your favorite MCU supervillain? Do you agree with our list? Are you rooting for an MCU villain who didn't make the cut? Comment your thoughts down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more 10 lists videos.